Okay. Hi, Tamar. Welcome to the Genetic Genius Podcast. I'm so excited to have you on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Yay! We're going to have so much fun talking about your book and lots of other things today. But first, can you just tell us a little bit about your story, what brought you to where you are now, which is a long distance road, I think. And then also just like what your place is, what you're doing kind of like now on the planet, your planetary impact, so to speak.
I always like to start my story off by letting people know that I had an amazing upbringing. My parents, we actually immigrated from the Netherlands when I was a year old, and I have a younger brother, and it was just a very loving family. We moved around when my dad decided to chase his dream of being a video producer because he was a baker originally. And so I always had to, that was awesome as a kid, by the way, because when you can go to a bakery after school and have donuts,
Right.
amazing.
You're like bonus.
Exactly. So a little bit of disappointed there when he went to become a video producer, but
Yeah.
regardless, we started moving around a lot. And so I got incredibly shy and I always had that desire to fit in. And then I
Mm.
noticed that I started to also seek that recognition from my dad. I played soccer when I was young. He was a coach. And so it was always like wanting that gold star, right? Wanting to be the best student. I did fairly well in school, but when I was 14, I remember going to a party one night and, we were always allowed to have alcohol when we were younger because in
Hmm.
Europe, obviously they start drinking a lot younger than in North America here.
Right.
But it was never frowned upon in our family. And a lot of my friends at the time, they couldn't drink, right? They weren't allowed to have alcohol. It was
Hmm.
always, kind of taboo. And so
Yeah.
we would always have sips of my parents' wine coolers and beer and stuff, and no biggie. But so I never grew up with the alcohol is bad. And so the first time though I got drunk, I remember I felt like I came alive, right? My
Mm-hmm.
world went from black and white to color. All of a
Mm.
sudden, I had this confidence which I'd never had before. I almost felt as though I could be who I felt other people wanted me to be. I was like,
Hmm.
hey, I'm really funny. It was like I came alive, right? And it's the
Yeah.
real me. Here I am, world.
Totally.
And so, the rest of my high school experience was not the same. I started to become one of those students that was never there, wasn't doing as well in school, and I started
Mm.
to write it off as well. I'm not as smart as the other kids, and it almost became my identity, right? That I was
Mm-hmm.
kind of the rebel in the class. I would get kicked out all the time for doing little pranks. Like the teacher didn't even have to ask who it was. I would just immediately, it's like, Tamar, get out.
It's me.
And, from being this innocent, shy girl to moving into this role was really different for me, but I enjoyed it because I was finally getting that attention that I was seeking. But unfortunately, that attention started to come in a very negative way later on. And, all my friends, they went off to college and then got married, but I didn't want to miss the next party. I was thinking, well, why waste my time in all that stuff
Right.
when I'm still young? I can do what I want. And so I think it was about my mid 20s that I fell into harder drugs. And
Hmm.
when I look back at that now, it makes me cringe because I always thought myself I was classy, right? I had a good upbringing. And some of the houses I would end up, I had no idea where I was. And it
Wow.
was just such a dark time, right?
Yeah.
Like, just if I tell people about it today, they're like, you really? And I'm like, oh, yeah,
No, that was me.
I went deep. And that addiction, because I wasn't afraid to put anything in my body. You gave
Hmm.
me something, I was like, cool, I'll try that. And it didn't
Hmm.
matter. There were times where I would black out
Mm.
just hanging out, sitting, talking to a friend, and all of a sudden there was this gap of time that I would just miss out of the blue, and I had no idea what was
Mm.
causing it. And then I went into food addiction as well, right? Because of
Mm.
course, when you're drinking 5,000 calories every weekend and then plus whatever you're drinking during the week, it adds
Right.
up and
Right.
clearly not healthy for you.
Yeah.
And, I would join, then it started the yo-yo dieting and extreme dieting. And, I joined Weight Watchers at one point, was a great program, but for somebody like me who manipulates everything,
Mm-hmm.
I planned it because I wanted everything very quickly as well. And I had a bag of popcorn with a Diet Coke for breakfast, a bag of popcorn with a Diet Coke for lunch. I took ephedrine-based diet pills.
Oh gosh.
And then I would go home, count out 7 oven baked French fries, a veggie patty, and I would go for a walk for an hour because that would afford me the extra points to have anywhere from 8 to 18 beers per night.
Oh my God.
And
You had to down to a science.
I did. And I was just like, I'm all in. And I have that type of personality. And I lost 35 pounds that way because it always had to revolve around my addiction. And
Mhm.
that just kind of started this vicious cycle of yo-yo dieting. And then, the drug addiction would come and go. I, got in abusive relationships for, I was in one for 4 years that ended up in assault. And that was, of course, with an addict. And so the
Mhm.
codependency came in there. And it was
Mhm.
like anything one could be addicted to, I've been addicted to. you know, Food is still a big one in my
Yeah.
life. But, I finally hit a point. I decided I was going to get married because I thought that'll fix everything, right? Because married people their lives are good, right? They buy a home, they get a good
Right.
job, everything is
The
good.
rosy package.
Exactly. And I was really doing what I thought society wanted me to do. Because again, I was like, okay, I need to feel like I belong. And if I do
Mm.
this, I'm going to belong. And my ex-husband now, but husband at the time, he was an alcoholic as well.
Mhm.
And I just slipped into a deep depression. I was, towards the end of my addiction, I was about 215 pounds. So I was extremely overweight.
Mhm.
I was really, really depressed. I had been on and off medication throughout my, I'd say, late 20s. And now I was 35.
Mhm.
And I was financially bankrupt. I mean, we, would literally, when payday came, we'd pay off some of our bills, some we'd hold off on, and we'd transfer balances on our credit card so we could get a bottle of vodka.
Wow.
And or we'd have a few $100s and we'd have one drunken night and it's like, hey, it's a good idea to buy a ticket to Vegas. Like, let's go to Vegas next month, right?
Yeah.
And when you do that for a long time, we were $75,000 in debt.
Wow.
And yeah, so I think it was at that point when I was just like, you know what? I can't do this anymore. And I remember sitting, I had a dog, I had a little pug. His name was Rudy. And I was sitting on the kitchen floor with a bottle of pills. And I was like, I'm done.
Mhm.
I've hurt too many people now in my life. And I'm unhappily married, because my husband and I fought all the time until he had had enough to drink that we would get along again. And I
Mhm.
just thought enough's enough, right? I'm going to stop putting this out into the world kind of thing. And so I remember just sitting there looking at the bottle of the pills. And then my dog had kind of looked up at me and pugs do this head tilt thing. I don't know what it is about animals, but it was almost like he was looking at me going, like, what are you doing? Kind of
Right.
thing, right?
Yeah. Like,
Like,
is
come
this
on, mom.
you? Really?
Yeah. I need to go for a walk later. So you need to like snap out of it, mom. But something inside me then and there, it just snapped. And it was like
Mhm.
divine intervention. I don't know what to call it, but something gave me that desire to live. And I think
Mhm.
that is really what's given me the passion and desire to do what I do today.
Mm. Wow. What a story.
That's a
That's
shortened version.
right. The longer version is in your book.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I sped with speed reading.
Awesome.
Yeah, which I was good at. That's what in medical school you learn to speed read but retain.
Oh, nice. I need to
Yeah.
pick that up.
Yeah. But what a great story. It sounds like you have had such a journey over the past, I don't know, 20 plus years or more. And so we'll dive deeper into some of those topics and really get into your passion for helping people now from your story, which is how we as healers, right? Health practitioners, that's how we find our place, I think, on the planet, is by that. Not all of us, but a lot of us have that kind of like inner trauma or story or something that lights the spark within us. We're like, oh, I want to help others now.
Absolutely.
Okay, so and you're currently living in Canada. Is that where you live now?
I am on
Nice.
the West Coast. Yeah, beautiful
Oh,
Vancouver, British Columbia.
oh, I love Vancouver. Yeah, I love it. So it's really pretty. We used to live in Seattle. I miss it out there. But also big hugs to the Pacific Northwest. Those trees are gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk first about the addiction piece, if we could, because I think that's such a huge part of your story. And we have so many listeners, including myself. Everyone either has had their own addiction problems or knows a family member or best friend. It's really common. So what, first of all, like, why do you think that kind of like starts to happen? Do you have a thought about that? Like, is it part of the DNA? Is it just part of who you are? I mean, we all have, I feel like there's got to be some like little piece, like so many of us experience it.
I think there's several different things. First of all, I think that, we can become addicted to anything that gives us pleasure, right? If
Mm-hmm.
if something makes us feel good and we like that feeling and we want to chase that feeling, that's what it was like for me for alcohol, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it runs in my family. My parents were not directly affected by it, but I have, aunts and uncles and stuff that have, and cousins. And we all say the same thing, right? The first time I drank, it was like, I said my world went from black and white to color, and it
Mm-hmm.
just did something for me that nothing else did. And
Wow. Mm-hmm.
and for most people that I talk to that don't suffer from addiction, they'll have a glass of wine or two and they start to get a little buzz going and they're like, "Whoo, I feel out of control," right?
Right.
I
Yeah. You're
gotta
like,
stop
okay.
here.
Yeah.
There's gonna be some table dancing any second here. And for me though, when I have a couple drinks, it's like, okay, all bets are off. You never know what's going to happen. I have to chase that feeling because it feels so good. Even though I know the consequence the next day,
Mm-hmm.
after I have that first drink, I can't stop. And I think for me, I was very lucky because I grew up in a very good home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people do start off, you know, I don't know if they become addicts. I know they've, scientifically proven apparently now that addiction can be something that is, within you kind of thing. But a lot of people have very traumatic lives. And so they
Mm-hmm.
turn to drugs and alcohol to numb that out. And
Right.
I think if you take something to excess enough, and you realize it's kind of numbing everything out, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with things, you could become addicted as well. But for
Right.
me, it was as soon as I drank something or I ingested any type of drug, and it's with food today too. As soon as I have sugar, oh
Mm-hmm.
boy, watch out.
You're like the sugar monster comes out, huh?
Exactly. I can't just have one cookie.
Right. Yeah, I think you made a really interesting point there in that, we do, all of us have a family history, right? And it's common, especially I think those of us that have family from the Great Depression. There was a lot of drinking, and my family's Irish and of course, and German. So I have both sides of that. But when there is trauma through our history, like you said, people will turn to something for pleasure, to hide the pain, so to speak. And I think we're in this time now where we're all on this kind of journey of self-discovery, where we're realizing, well, there's got to be another place. There's got to be another way for me to find the pleasure, and that's one of the reasons I like just love what you're doing and helping people in that way.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely a gift now. I don't look at it as something. I used to look at it as something that would affect my future, but I no longer see it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally true. So when you first started seeing the alcohol or the different addictions, it sounded like there was many different types, which is usually is common. When did you first start seeing it affect your life? Were you able to notice it? That I think that it's common to have that kind of cloud, like you're saying, in that pleasure state. Were you able to see like the outside view, or was it just so deep down the hole?
I think there was times I definitely hit several bottoms throughout my addiction because
Mm-hmm.
because I always looked at myself as I'm not an addict, right? I'm not an alcoholic. I don't
Mm-hmm.
classify as that because I don't fit what I thought was a stereotypical alcoholic
Mm-hmm.
addict, which is you're homeless, you're drinking out of the brown paper bag. That
Right.
wasn't me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, when in my mid 20s, when I got into harder drugs,
Mm-hmm.
then it was almost as if I was having an out of body experience and I'm kind of watching myself. It's like, what are you doing? But I couldn't stop it,
Mm-hmm.
and then when I got into a relationship with an addict and stayed and enabled that relationship for 4 years, then all of a sudden I was better than him and I was
Mm-hmm.
trying to save him. So I let off a little bit of the drugs and I stuck more to alcohol because alcohol's always been my main thing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's my number one crutch.
Mm-hmm.
But it was very up and down because I think for so long I was trying to prove to myself and prove to everybody around me that I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
a problem.
Right. Totally. We're always doing that, right?
Exactly.
The rosy picture. So when did you first, do you remember have the memory when you first said like, okay, I'm an addict, I have a problem? Was that something like that came into your vocabulary when you had the switch when you're talking about, the moment with your little pug? Like was that the moment you're like, I have the problem, I'm an addict, or was it before that?
Well, it's funny because it happened after that. I
Mm,
actually, because of course I didn't want to acknowledge the fact that I had a problem, I just
right.
thought, well, I'm dealing with some terrible life situations, right? It was everybody else's fault around me. It was my ex-husband's fault, right? He made me
Mm-hmm.
unhappy. He made me overweight. And so I did what everybody did in the 2012 on New Year's Day. I made my New Year's resolution. I'm like, I'm going to go to the gym because I truly believe that if I fixed how I looked on the outside,
Mm-hmm.
then it would heal who I was on the inside. And so the first month I gave it because I'm that type A personality that gives it everything I got. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm going every single day. I'm going to
Right.
go two
Nothing's gonna
hours a
stop
day.
me.
I'm going to be the first one in the gym. And so I started doing that, but I felt a little bit lost. And then I actually ended up seeing a personal trainer there. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I can ask for help. Like I can
Mm-hmm.
admit that I don't got this thing. And we actually knew each other. It turns
Mm-hmm.
out we were in high school together. We were in gymnastics for a year. We were terrible. So
So close
gymnastics,
buds.
yeah, I was never going to be a professional gymnast. And so we kind of laughed about that. And she said, Kay, in all seriousness, Tamar, what's your goal? And because everything was about that recognition and
Mm-hmm.
hoping that other people loved me and saw me as thin and beautiful and a nice person, the first thing that came out of my mouth was, you know what? I want to buy a bikini and I want to feel comfortable in my own skin. But I also want to go to Vegas and sit at a pool party because that was the cool thing to do, right? I didn't have an alcohol problem. And she laughed at me and said, okay, I've never heard a goal like that before. It would usually be, I'm going to fit the bikini, right? But I had to add the Vegas pool party.
Right.
And so I was all in. And I'm like, you tell me what to eat, and I'm going to eat that. And I'm going to go to the gym as much as possible. And so I basically started just eating chicken, broccoli, and rice every day. I would have one treat meal on the weekend that I looked forward to each and every week. And I binged on that treat meal. But the one problem I still had was the alcohol.
Mm.
And because I was very crafty, I thought, okay, how can I count? Because I was counting my calories. I'm like, how can I do this and still have some drinks? And so what I would do is I would, calculate my calories for the week, and I would have 3 beers on Friday, 3 beers on Saturday, and 3 beers on Sunday. And the way I did that was I would give them to my husband. We would go out and I'm like, let's stay here for an hour. I'm going to drink these beers and then you're going to take me home. And I actually would drink half a bottle of NyQuil so that I could pass out when I got
Wow.
home.
So you wouldn't drink anymore?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I did that, but it was interesting because my trainer that I hired was actually in recovery. And I would come the next week to the gym and I would share my weekly food plan and I'd say, "Oh, I only had 9 beers." And when I say that out loud now, only 9 drinks, like it seems excess because I would never drink nine 9 glasses of orange juice or whatever. It seems
Right.
excess.
Yeah.
And so I was so excited about only having those 9 drinks. And then I remember a few months later, we actually ended up going bungee jumping together. And she said, "Hey, you know what? Like, if you ever, need help with recovery or you want to quit drinking, let me know because I haven't drank for, 4 years now."
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't need that.
Mm.
I'm okay. Like, look at how controlled I am right now. I'm
Right.
having
Yeah.
9 beers every weekend. And that following weekend, I actually had plans to go away with my husband. And it was the first time I hadn't packed my schedule full of working out, boot camps, or anything. And
Hmm.
I'm like, I'm going to bring 1 bottle of wine with me. That's it. Like, I'm going
Hmm.
to show the most control I've ever shown, right? For
Yeah.
this whole weekend. And we went away, and I had the bottle of wine in probably about half an hour, and I had another box of wine, a case of beer, and we ran a $200 bar tab the first night
Wow.
because it was the first time I had been out and about in an
Mhm.
uncontrolled environment, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so I made some very bad decisions that weekend. And that's when I reached out and said, okay, I think I need help. Like,
Hmm.
I can't control this anymore. And it always got to the point where, there was times my husband would leave me because he was so irate with my behavior in the bathtub unsupervised and I would wake up with water to my chin. And that's how
Whoa.
badly I hurt him.
Yeah.
So that was the moment. And that was in June 2012 where I knew, okay, I can't control this. Like, I obsess about everything.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. That's like a key piece, it's just like we can go on and on without when with and then denying something that's not like you say, like helping us to find our truest potential. It's like what can then you had that turning stone, that key point, that pivot in the 2012, really powerful. And your friend was great. You're the trainer to reach out to you. And I think that's kind of a key point I want to talk about too is, when you're in the thick of it and you have the blinders on where you can't really see, how to even ask for help, or if you need help, what should our listeners do, if they're like thinking like, okay, I maybe they don't even know how to say, like you said, I don't even know if I have an addiction. I'm fine, right? But if they're feeling whatever that road is, what can you recommend that first step that they should do to reach out for help? How do they ask for it? How should they find someone? Things like that.
Well, first of all, I think the key is kind of realizing that you do have a problem because I think
Hmm.
there's so many people out there that are struggling with addiction right now.
Right,
And
especially now with COVID and everything.
exactly. And,
Yeah.
I get asked that a lot, how do I know? And it's only for you to decide if you have a problem. But if you spend a good amount of time thinking about it, you probably have a problem, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Yep.
And if you just catch yourself like trying to justify not drinking or not using drugs,
Oh, right.
like,
Hmm.
I would always, if I went a month, like I would do bets all throughout my addiction. Like, I can go a month without drinking. People who don't have a problem don't have to justify. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? They don't have to
Right.
tell people they don't. And I think today there's so many different programs out there. I mean,
Hmm.
you have your standard, Alcoholics Anonymous people can go to. There's lots of support groups online. I would
Right.
say the biggest thing is find somebody who's had a problem with addiction, find out how they got sober, and
Hmm.
try it because I think there's so many different ways out there to get sober and not everybody fits into a certain mold, right?
Right.
But I think that connection with someone else who's been where you are is so ultra important, even if it's only one person to start with, and then you build your support network from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's key. Having that person who you can relate to and then be able to have them help you in some way, either like they're in the same group or program that you're working with, or they can refer you to a program. Because then you really have that relationship of something that worked. And when you're in that space of being really needing help, it's hard to know where to ask for help. Hard to know, you want to really have something that can work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when you felt that like turn of the corner, when you started in recovery, did you go into a program right away? What did that look like for you?
I did. I went into a 12-step program.
Mm-hmm.
And I did because, at first, I'll be honest, I didn't want to be there. I remember the first time I went, I was like, I don't belong here with these people. I'm not like these people. And, the second time I actually went to a meeting, somebody was celebrating 4 years. And I listened to what the family had shared about and what he had shared about his previous experience. And I started to kind of connect the dots, right? I started to
Mm.
hear things that I could relate to. And it was there was something soothing about talking to somebody else that you would tell them your deepest darkest secrets and they're like, I know, I've done the same thing. And it was
Hmm.
all of a sudden like, okay,
Oh,
I'm
I
not a
can relate.
loser.
Yeah.
Whew.
Somebody else is like me. Right. Yeah.
And it took a lot of work. I mean, it
Mhm.
took a lot of I'm currently writing my second book and it really takes on from when I got sober to now,
Hmm.
but it was a constant work. It was owning my life, right? A lot of people put a
Right.
lot of blame on other people for how they end up, and I had to own all of it. Like my life was my fault and I had to clean that up. So that was a huge part of it. And it was just, getting that spiritual life and doing things for other people. I had to get
Hmm.
out of myself. I was so incredibly self centered. So just helping other people really helped keep me sober in the beginning.
Yeah, that is so, I love that, when we can turn around and see that what we've been experiencing can then help others. And that's a really big part of any shift and change in health. Being able to see whatever it is, for example, I don't know, like depression, how you were talking about that before, when we have someone we can see, a friend or family member, anyone, when we can help them to move through that difficult time. And I think right now during COVID, a lot of people are experiencing that, seeing their family members or friends in a whole different light because they're experiencing them a lot more closely, right?
Yes,
They're like,
yes.
oh, I'm spending so much more time with you now. This is what's really going on. So that's been, a big shift for my patients is just, they're like, wow, I don't know what to do. I'm with my partner for hours and hours every day.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
So that can turn on all different types of emotions for sure. Um, can we pause for 1 second?
Yes. Aw.
Okay, so once we're in that place of really recognizing and helping others, what do you think about the expression, once an addict, always an addict? I was thinking about that today. I was kind of, like, it's just, I think that sets a precedent. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about it.
I think that, for myself personally, I don't believe I could safely drink again, right?
Hmm.
Because it's just, I've proven it to myself over and over again that if I have a drink, then I'm going to be right back, if not worse than I was before, because it's something that kind of progresses over
Right.
time.
Triggers you.
Exactly. But,
Hmm.
I can call myself an alcoholic,
Hmm.
but I don't let that really define me in a negative anyway
Hmm.
anymore. I can use that to say, you know what, I'm an alcoholic that's in recovery because
Right.
I don't think I'll ever be recovered from it, right? I mean, I just know how it's going to turn out if I do drink again. But
Hmm.
I think that there's such a stigma about around addiction,
Yeah.
and that is something that in the beginning when I came into recovery, it was like, don't talk about it. There's still people who won't accept you. And what I'm finding now is that the more vulnerable I am with it, so
Hmm.
many more people are coming out of the woodwork saying, I have a problem and I never thought I did because for me, it was 5 glasses of wine. Well, I drank, 20. But, to someone that could be a problem for them and it could make their marriage terrible and all this stuff. So, I think that I don't know, me saying I'm an alcoholic is a blessing today.
Right. Yeah. I think that's so powerful. And that is also such a key point in that there are so many people. I think that that's a shift that you talked about, how people are able to come out and talk about their addictions more, because I think it was and has come through a different light. Over the past 20 years, I think people are realizing like, hey, it's okay to talk about my problems and I need help with them. Yeah, I was just thinking that, like, when that expression, like, once an addict, always an addict, just like really labels someone, in a really derogatory way. And it doesn't help to empower them. You can still have, like you said, in recovery and still know what it would shift for you, but that's a whole different connotation. So anyway, I thought that was just a really interesting aspect, because that's still, that old paradigm exists, but we're definitely moving away from that. And I think your book talks a lot about that and its empowerment. Um, so for our listeners, we were talking a little bit how they begin that journey, first maybe like reaching out and finding help. And so how do you have a way that you work with specific clients? And then so I'd like to talk about that before we kind of like dive a little bit deeper into the book. And how do you work with clients on that first step? What's the journey of healing and empowerment?
So typically, when I'm working with someone, I get them to determine what their vision is, because I
Mm,
know that for me, after the first year, in my first year of recovery, I lost 75 pounds and I got sober, which is great, but I actually felt like I'd graduated. I'm like, hey, I'm good. I got this now,
right.
right?
Woo!
And
See you later.
that was followed by 6 years of complacency and the
Mm,
start of the yo-yo dieting a little bit again, right? And
yeah.
I knew that I had to find my passion and my purpose in life.
Mm,
And I always, because I think alcoholics can be very A-type personalities, and we're
mm-hmm.
go-getters. Like, it's
Right.
like we're doing everything all in. And I thought, if I can use even half that amount of effort that I did getting loaded into
Mm,
something more positive,
right.
what can I do with myself? So for me, I've been on this journey myself as well. And I started with my podcast in December,
Mm-hmm.
taking my listeners. So I knew that creating a vision is one of the most important things, having some focus and something that gets you out of bed in the morning. Because
Right.
for me, I love getting up at 4 a.m. And I know it sounds crazy, but I can't wait to go to bed early at night. And that doesn't always happen, but I make sure I get my, 8 hours of sleep if I can,
Mm-hmm.
because I love getting up in the morning. I love when 4 a.m. hits and I have those 3 hours in the morning to just do my stuff. And so
Mm-hmm. The rest of
when I,
the world is asleep.
exactly, it's
Yeah.
quiet, it's
Mm-hmm.
amazing what you can get done at that time.
Totally.
And you're much more productive too. But when my clients finally see a vision for themselves, and like you said, empowerment,
Right.
I want to empower them to go, oh, maybe I can do more. And from there, we start to figure out their goals that align
Mm-hmm.
with that, right?
Yeah.
And then I really get into like the emotional management, the red flags, that negative self-talk. Because I mean, even in those years that I was super complacent, I was like, I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. I'm never going to be this. I'm
Mm-hmm.
destined to work the Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 job that I'm going to have anxiety over. And
Right.
so that's something big to focus on, right? Is that
Mm-hmm.
we all have the potential to do so much more than we think. And I really want to start off by empowering people to see that in themselves, because
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see it in me. It took me surrounding myself with people who were entrepreneurs, and they're like, Tamar, you have this amazing story. You need to share it and help other people. And
Mm-hmm.
they gave me the belief until I could hold that on my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you have someone that believes in you, it's like a little spark of fire that can like help you light the path moving forward. But it's so
Exactly.
hard for us to see that sometimes on our own, especially when we're in that state of needing help. We want to help support them, but we don't want to be the crutch either.
Exactly.
um, and you talked a little bit about this, but I'd like for you to just touch base on it again. How do addictions like numb the truest version of ourselves?
So it made me forget everything. I was always I love being that cheerleader. I love holding people accountable. And when I drank, it just completely got rid of any like ambition that I had,
Mhm.
I had these amazing ideas. I was quite the dreamer. I mean, if, when I was tying one on, I could tell you I was going to be a millionaire a couple years down the road and all this stuff. But I really didn't have, it was always other people's dreams, right? I
Mhm.
was following people and I
Right.
wasn't standing out in my own strength. And I think that was one of the biggest things is I was always trying to be like other people. And when I
Hmm.
quit drinking, I started to find out who I really was.
Oh yeah, that's key. When we're in that addictive phase, we really are trying to prove to others something that we're not. It's like this other version that we really don't even. None of us. I don't even know what version that is. Some mystery version that we make up, but every day it changes, right? Like, okay, you're my best friend. I'm going to go out with you tonight. What version do you want me to be?
Exactly. I was a great dancer, apparently.
Oh, the things we do, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about your book. I want to make sure. And you also mentioned that you have another book coming out, but this is the first book. So this is
Yes.
the Hope Elevated: How to Accept Your Past, Gain Clarity, and Develop a Healthy Mindset, which is a great title. I love that.
Thank you. It was a lot of, it was very therapeutic to write. Like I said, I didn't do great in high school. In fact, my English teacher, I remember when I had my final exam, she threw my exam down and she said, Tamar, if you fail and you're with me next year again, I'm going to make your life a living hell. And so I was like,
Oh,
bad student, right?
yeah.
And I always wanted to write my story, over the last few years. And I had this desire to do so, but I was really afraid to because I'd always been told, just remain humble. And it has nothing to do with humility. I'm realizing that now. But when COVID hit, I was like, you know what? I have an opportunity here. And I didn't
Hmm.
look at it as something that was going to be harmful. I
Right.
looked at it as now I have a chance to do what I really love. And
Hmm.
so I started writing the book, and so much came out that I had long since like buried away. And
Forgotten way down deep. Huh?
oh yeah, like I would be writing and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I remembered this." And I went to therapy, and I have an amazing therapist, and quite a few times throughout the book because I was like, "I haven't even thought about this and why." And we
Mm.
started digging into that, which was really it was actually a fantastic journey because I'd also podcasted as I was going along and doing
Mhm.
this. And I noticed what happened was as I wrote each chapter of the book and I did podcasts about them, it took away the emotion. So
Mm.
when I talk about the chapter where I got abused by my ex, I used to not be able to talk about that, and I'd burst into tears and stuff. But
Mm.
it was just such a healing journey for me, and it was an incredible experience. And it honestly, it gave me the confidence that I never thought I had. I'm like,
Mm.
okay, I can write a book. What else can I do?
Right. What's next?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And it's so it's just amazing that the book for you is a healing process. Like, it's such an amazing healing process for others, but when then you can have the healing process yourself. And I liked how throughout the book you have different things that are so key, like solutions and tips. And I like how you have your podcast selected in there, and it's great to have tools for the readers because then it gives them something to cling to, like, oh, and relate to.
Yes.
Yeah. So what was the greater, or what is the greater intention of the book? Was there kind of like a purpose behind it?
So the first book was really to kind of get my story out there, and I want people to know not to be ashamed of their past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because my parents didn't know everything, and they both read the book in one day. My mom
Oh
actually
boy. You're like, nice to meet you, mom.
she actually phoned me one Saturday, and I said, hey mom, I'm finished the book. And she was really excited for me. And I said, did you want to read it? And she goes, okay, but I'm warning you that it's going to take me a couple weeks to read this book. And I said, yeah, no problem. And she said she's a really slow reader. Well, at 10 a.m. the next morning, she called me and she's like, hi. I'm like, hi, mom. And just a long pause, right? And she said, other than, I want to ground you for the rest of your life, I'm super grateful you're alive. And
Oh.
so even though I don't know if they had to go to counseling after that, but we did talk, both of them were really proud of me. But I wanted people to know that no matter what you've been through, you don't have to be ashamed. And you can actually use that as a gift, right? That doesn't have to be something that you carry around with you as this big weight. Like, I used to think, well, who am I to be a coach? Well, I've got a doctor's really degree in addiction. I've been doing it for 20 plus years. So who says I don't have the education?
Right, totally. Yeah, you know, it's amazing what can happen when we share our story. And I really appreciate the fact that you are using your book as a way for people to understand the shame aspect of addiction, because it's so unfortunate that, you know, because then it doesn't allow people to even go into that healing space where we really need them to be, you know. And so I really appreciate that, you coming forth and helping people with your story and helping them see that, hey, this is, it's just life, you know, we all f up in some, you know, some way, and instead of being so hurtful for ourselves, we got to let it go and move forward, right?
Exactly.
In your book, I know we talked a little bit about it before, in the food addiction section, you call it like crash dieting. I love that part of the chapter name. And what do you think about the connection between the dietary aspect or nutritional aspect of addictions based in with the other addictions? And I see many patients that have multiple addictions, so I just find it interesting that many people have both, you know. And it's like, not just, there's usually not one addiction like, oh yeah, I'm addicted to this. It usually has several different layers. But food, I would say, is probably like 95% connected to another addiction. I was just wondering your thoughts about that.
Yeah, and food is still one. I mean, like I said, if I have that cookie, I want all 12 of them. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm very mindful of that now, though, because I am very aware of my addictive tendencies. But
Mm-hmm.
I think, it's what gives you that instant gratification, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
either
Mm-hmm.
drugs, it was either alcohol, or it was food. I mean, if I'm upset or having a bad day today, and I go out for dinner with a friend, I'm having that burger and fries, right? And I'm going to have
Right.
that mayo with the fries.
Yeah.
And because it gives me that the same feeling that alcohol did, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was just kind of, and I think that's really what it is it kind of, when I'm experiencing something emotional,
Mm-hmm.
I need something to take away those feelings because I don't like feeling those feelings, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
I want to make it better, and it doesn't matter what the consequences, the next day I feel terrible for a little bit, but all I have to do is have that food again and there I
Mm-hmm.
go. It's the same
Right.
thing. Like I gave up sugar for 5 months
Mm-hmm.
starting in February and I felt phenomenal. But as soon as I went out for dinner and I had that burger and fries again, it's been harder to manage. So it's just, I think, being really aware of it. But yeah, it's just that instant gratification.
Right. Yeah. Food is totally gratifying in that way, right? Like, oh, have a
Yep.
piece of chocolate or whatever. I was listening to this little podcast the other day, and it was talking about, you know, we have created this huge stigma around food. You know, you should eat this, you shouldn't eat that. You should, you know, this is bad for you, this is good for you. How do people even know how to eat? You know, and I work with lots of patients that have disorders around food because it's toxic for their system in some way. But I'm just like, there's got to be a reason why we have all these different things about food. And the person was talking about how, you know, trusting your intuition is so key. And I think that's what you were saying about how that instant gratification, well, what do I need in this moment, really? You know, is it the whatever, the, you know, the junk food, I don't know, or which could be fine, or do I need, you know, a piece of kale?
Yeah, and we
But
go to extremes, right? That's
right.
the part when in my dieting journey, I would be like, okay, I'm only eating chicken, broccoli, and rice. And I would do
Hmm.
it for a few months. And then as soon as I went off and tried to go back on, it wasn't sustainable anymore. And so
Right.
we just go through these extremes instead of going, okay, I'm just going to enjoy this meal. I'm going to enjoy this piece of chocolate. Tomorrow is a new day.
Hmm. Yeah, that should be the new way of eating, right? I live for the moment.
Exactly.
Yeah. Another aspect that I really liked about the book that I wanted to touch on is the kind of like the inspiration behind the solutions. So you, if you could talk a little bit about kind of the ends of the chapters, about what that includes, and then your inspiration about providing that to the readers.
Well, I always feel like when I read these books that, you read this story and then there's an action item. I love those. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
I want to do this action, right? Because I want
Right.
the gold star.
Right. Yeah.
And
A personality.
exactly, I'm going to do it and I'm going to get whatever that freebie is. And I
Totally.
love freebies in books, by the way. But I just thought I've kind of over the years learned that if I'm going to talk about something, to have a solution, right? I
Mm-hmm.
try to be that way if I'm discussing an issue with a friend and I'm like, "Hey, what do you think about this? Do you have any solutions?" And so I thought if I'm going to write about each chapter, why
Mm-hmm.
not write some tips or strategies so that people can go, "Oh, I haven't tried that yet. I'm going to try it," because today that's what I do, right? I'm not stuck to one thing.
Right.
If somebody's doing something like a form of meditation that's really working from them, I'll try it for a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make the book very solution focused
Mm-hmm.
and not so much on the drama, on the struggle, because there's so much more to it, and also to share what I'm learning along the way, because I want people to come on this journey with me. I mean, I'm not done. I haven't graduated. I'm still traveling down this road.
Right, totally. Yeah, I found it so relatable. I really like that part of it because like as you're reading, then you have this aspect of like, oh yeah, she really did go through all this. And look, she's giving me some solutions. So kudos to that. I really liked that part a lot. And I think the readers will love that. And one last thing about talking about like the mindset part of the book. What are some like first tools and steps that listeners can really start to take to help to shift that mindset? I think that's like the key to help shifting mindset is can be the hardest part, and there's steps to when you're ready to shift something. And so when a person is in the state of like, okay, I'm ready to shift, how do you work with them in overcoming like that limited belief system? And then like I'd love for you to talk about like what that limiting belief is. It's like, okay, I can see that there's something going on. How do I change my mindset to move forward? And then what's limiting me from being my best self?
Well, definitely recognizing patterns. So,
Mm-hmm.
one of the exercises I did when I got sober was I wrote out my life story. And in my new book, that's actually the first chapters. There's going to be an exercise, so I'm doing it very similar format. But
Mm-hmm.
it's really recognizing where you're at, right? Because I think a lot of people are in denial about
Mm-hmm.
things in their past,
Right.
things that they've gotten over. And I think it's really important to kind of start where you are and to
Mm-hmm.
kind of go back. Let's identify some of the patterns, some of your negative habits. Habits has been a big thing. And I always tell people if they're, especially on a weight loss journey, because it's something that I can relate to really well, it's like stop looking for the quick fixes. Let's
Right.
find out what the problem is. Like, do you get triggered if you eat chocolate? Do you go on a bender on the weekend?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the key is to really find out where you're at and acknowledge those unhealthy behaviors and patterns, and then start to create new habits, and one at a time. Like
Mm-hmm.
I used to do everything at once. I'm like, okay, I'm changing my life. It's January 1st. I'm all
Everything.
in. Right. And it gets exhausting. And what happens is we use all this willpower to
Mm-hmm.
try and change. And then when it's not going as planned in week 2 or 3, we're like, screw this. It doesn't
Right. I'm
work.
done.
Right.
Yeah.
On to the next thing. So I tell clients it's about the journey, right? This isn't going to be an overnight thing. Let's change some habits. How do you feel? Okay, great. We're going to reassess. Now we're going to do it again. And then, like I said, really helping them create a vision for what it is they want,
Right.
because
Mm-hmm.
when you have a clear direction, like I know what my passion is, right? I love coaching. I love
Yep.
helping people. I love helping them see their true potential, right? And what they're really capable of. And that wakes me up every morning. So when you can identify that, you can start creating goals that align with that vision. And all of a sudden, the goals become easier to accomplish because you actually enjoy accomplishing them.
Right.
Right. And it's baby steps. So taking those
Mm-hmm.
goals and going, okay, let's break them out into milestones and tasks and giving yourself that daily win. Because I know a lot of people, it's like, okay, well, day one, I haven't achieved my goal yet. I haven't, done this or that. But it's like, well, what did you do? Right. It's taking one step every day that aligns with what it is that you want for your life. So I think it just takes time. It takes developing and incorporating new habits, because people have to understand too, if they've spent 20 years with a specific habit, they're not going to get rid of it overnight.
No, yeah, definitely not. Yeah, I tell patients that all the time. How long have you been working with this? It's not an instant pill that you can go from like here to here. Sometimes we can make a big shift quickly. It depends on our resistance level, right? Like,
Yeah.
how much are we resisting to change? How much are we
Yes.
ready to allow the new thing to come in? If it's something really easy, then we can sometimes make it just overnight. But if it's something we're really resisting, then it can be a little longer.
It is, and I loved what you said about the resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like today I'm riding this wave of outside, way outside my comfort zone. But for
Mm-hmm.
the first time, it feels really good. And if I
Mm-hmm.
don't feel uncomfortable, I'm not growing. So it's
Mm-hmm.
most people will hit that and they turn around, and I tell them, keep
Right.
going, because that actually means the good stuff is about to happen.
That's right. Exactly. It's like when we are at that cliff of, fear, that's when we're like going to do something that's really going to make a difference, of course, or, not to your death. That's not what I mean.
Yeah.
But, jumping off into a new place on the
Yes.
road, as you talk about with the road forward, as which is the name of your company and your website. It's like when you have that road ahead of you, you could have 100 different roads. How are you going to be excited to move down the path that has the most fun, the most joy, the most resiliency? And I like really enjoyed that about your book.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how can people find you? I just mentioned your website, but how can people find you and buy and get your book? And also, what's the best way to follow you? Social media, you're on Instagram as well.
I am. Probably the easiest way is to head on over to my website, which is
Mm-hmm.
www.theroadforward.ca. And I've got
.ca, not .com.
.ca, yep, .ca, the Canadian.
Yeah.
And I hang out on Instagram quite a bit, and that's the Road to Health PC for podcast.
Hmm.
That's where I post all that kind of stuff. And then Tamar Medford on Facebook. But all my social media handles are right below on my website, so you can reach me at any one of them.
Great. And do you do individual sessions or individual working with people in different programs, and you also do group sessions too, right? And could you talk just a few minutes about what that would look like if in a group setting?
Absolutely. I facilitate a program called Mensana, which is Latin for healthy mind and a healthy body.
Mm-hmm.
And it really takes a look at the Japanese philosophy of ikigai. And so we
Mm-hmm.
start off with determining one's ikigai, which is their purpose for in
Mm-hmm.
life, right? Their reason for being. And
Mm-hmm.
then once we've determined that, we figure out goals, and we really take you through the emotional
Mm-hmm.
aspect, so living a balanced life. We talk about emotional resilience, how to handle stress. We call it a red flag concept, which is that negative self-talk and how to
Mm-hmm.
identify it. So it's actually, I love facilitating the program because a lot of people in the beginning are like, okay, well, this is a goal setting thing. And I'm like, oh, you just wait. And
Wait till the
I know.
end.
But, a few modules in, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to think about these words that I've never thought of, right? And I can hear myself saying things now. And so you find that by starting to identify these behaviors in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
we recognize them and we start to change them, right? Because we just go
Mm-hmm.
live day to day and don't even think about this stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think especially right now, it just helps build that focus, and it helps build that emotional resilience. And it's an amazing program. I love teaching it because it just, when the lights go on, it just, that fills my cup.
Yeah, totally. I can see the passion in you and hear it in your voice. Sounds like a wonderful program. And especially, I really think we're moving into this space of group healing and community healing, and especially with, the aspect of Zoom and group and everything on this video. It's made people, a lot more comfortable about being in a virtual world, which that changes our ability to heal on a planetary level, like unmasked on anything we've ever experienced before. So I really applaud you for your group healing. I think that's our next phase.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tamar. It's been such a great joy to have you on the show today and talk all about addictions. We covered everything. But if you want to learn more and hear her amazing story, please check out. Oh, you didn't say how to get the book.
Hope Elevated on Amazon, all of the Amazons. So you can just either Google my name or Hope Elevated and I'll show up.
Great. And I'll put all that in the show notes so people will be able to find it there. Okay. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for having me.